We're just going to give it another few minutes, members. I know a couple of members are running a little bit late. Here's one now, so we'll probably officially kick off at 7:05 for your awareness. Look, we've got enough members here. We actually might kick off. So my name is Nathan Shanks. I'm the Deputy Mayor of Gawler. I'll be chairing this meeting tonight. So I'd just like to start with the statement of acknowledgement. We'd like to acknowledge this land that we meet on today as the traditional lands for the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Greater Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. Welcome members and those that are tuning in. I'm just going to do a bit of a roll call. I know we do currently have Councillor Solomon and Councillor Samble. I'm informed they're probably going to be a couple of minutes late, so we'll just update that as they roll in when they do. Oh, sorry, CEO.
Mr Deputy Mayor, just like to note the apology from Mayor Redburn for this evening.
Of course. Thank you very much for that. Any motions to grant leave of absence members at this time? There be none. No leave of absence recorded and no non-attendance apology from Mayor Karen Redmond, rightfully noted above. We haven't received any deputations, so just moving forward. Any declarations of interest, councillors? There be none. We have a decision report, as members know, a special council meeting as part of our budget process. I wouldn't mind asking the chamber just to allow us to delegate to Sharon Perkins to speak through where we're currently sitting, and then we'll move forward from there.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So just in relation to the report, so the report that is being considered tonight is based on the information that has actually been provided through the information sessions that were held in February and earlier this month in March. And pretty much what we're actually forecasting is that we are forecasting an operating surplus of around $80,000. And that is actually I suppose, a better outcome compared to what we had forecast in the long-term financial plan that we had adopted. The budget, the underlying principles of the budget actually coincide with the financial strategy that we've actually set out in the long-term financial plan, and given that this is our first budget since adopting it, the emphasis has been on those two themes, underlying themes of making sure that we're controlling our expenditure and addressing our renewal backlog. So they're the two underlying themes. In relation to, I suppose, the approach that staff have taken, one of the criteria was a zero-based budgeting, so they did go back to, I suppose, first principles rather than just sit there and say, okay, well, this is the money I had this year, what do I'll just add a bit for CPI, or so we did have that zero-based budget, and I think that approach actually reflects the movement from a forecast operating deficit of this year to our operating surplus. Again, I suppose the projects budgets, which takes into account new initiatives and the capital works program, both renewal and new, is based on the information that has been presented. And and so that hasn't actually changed from, there's no recommended changes to that budget since the 4th of March. In addition, information has been distributed to council members where, in response to some of the queries that were actually taken on notice at that information session, and any subsequent questions that have actually come through to us. So we have provided full responses to that, so more than happy to take questions on that or further clarification. And you will also have a piece of paper that was on the desk which was in response to some further questions that Helen, or comments that Helen made, Councillor Hennessy made tonight, later this afternoon, which I responded to around about 5:30. So other than that, I'm happy to take any questions at this point in time. Just one thing is to sit there and say, I suppose the purpose of the budget being presented tonight is for the council to endorse that they are actually happy with the budget to be provided to the Audit and Risk Committee. I think that this is actually, like, if there's certain aspects of the budget that you aren't comfortable with or that you want further clarification, this is the time to actually do that, rather than sort of sit there and say, oh, okay, well, I'll let it go. You know, if there is things that I suspect that there will be things that you love about the budget, there will be things that you like about the budget, and definitely if there's things that you don't like about the budget as it's presented, I think this is actually the opportunity to actually raise those, rather than so we can actually make sure that the budget that we do present to the Audit Committee is actually the budget that essentially Council wants to go out to the community for community consultation on.
Thank you, Sharon. Look, I'm in members' hands here. You know, we do have one item on the agenda tonight, so I'm more than happy to facilitate a bit of a Q&A before we actually get into the report. Councillor Davies, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I guess if we'll ask questions before we move the motions and all that. So there was a little bit of discussion last time about the reasoning behind the Himmerford Grove Reserve, but Wendy wasn't here at the time, so I just thought she might be interested in explaining her reasoning for putting that in.
Wendy, are you able to provide a little bit of feedback? Yep.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, through the chair. So I have provided quite a response back in writing through some questions that came in from Councillor Koch as well. So there's a twofold reason that I have put forward. Actually, there's a threefold reason that I've put forward Himmerford Road. So behind the scenes, staff have been looking at all our irrigated sites for open space, and looking at what are the priority ones for renewal, and in this case, I guess, reinvigoration, because there were a number of sites that were switched off during the drought period. So we have been assessing those behind the scenes, looking at a whole different suite of reasons, I guess value for money being one of them, in terms of what the community offering would be versus the cost. So Himmerford Grove, in that respect, is one of the higher value sites that we would consider putting forward. That in coordination with the fact that through all the engagement with the Himmerford Grove, the proposed telecommunications facility, like the loss of that reserve and the desire to have it reinstated in some sort of format has been a very, very common feedback through all of that engagement. And I don't think this isn't a knee-jerk response to that. It was the fact that I'd also had the other piece of work going on in the background around how would you actually invest in renewing irrigation if you had budget for it. The third part of that is, I guess, when we did the open space asset condition assessment, and when we compared what the open space renewal budget should be in terms of actually maintaining our open space assets, there was, for this financial year in particular, a gap between what we had already identified for renewal versus what the long-term financial plan and the asset management plan suggests as the value for renewal. I will say that, again, the open space renewal value that we've presented in total is still under what the LTFP has, so we haven't just gone for the upper limit there. So they're the three reasons. The value that I have included in the budget is the absolute upper limit in my mind. And I think this is probably where there was a step that would have been preferable to have done, and I apologise for not having done that, where I actually presented to council some of the outcomes of that irrigation renewal assessment, and I guess that consolidated feedback around Hemmerford and a potential process for how we go forward with it. But I guess I'll explain it to you verbally. My view is that you wouldn't actually do any work there until you had done a proper community engagement process to actually understand what people really wanted to do there. We're not proposing that you would reinstate the entire old oval space. Instead, you'd look at reinstating an area of it and then doing some, simple integration works to maximise the usage of the space. And I guess by that we'd be trying, based on what feedback I already have heard, is to create a grass space that is big enough for people to actually have a proper ball sport kickabout space on, to walk their dogs comfortably on. At the moment, people can't even walk their dogs on it. It's just so full of prickles. But then I guess to optimise that with the rest of the reserve, and we really need to explore how we do that. And then on the basis of that engagement and a further report to council with some recommendations, then move forward with investment there. There will be ongoing ops costs with it if we do reinvigorate it. We've assessed that in terms of, I guess, mowing an irrigated lawn, we could actually do that within our existing team capacity. We're pushing the boundary of what they can do. But the water costs, so there would be an associated water cost, and again, that's going to be arranged depending on how much you irrigate. I haven't put that into any budget because, in my view, you wouldn't actually have done any of the irrigation renewal until very late in the financial year. And so the water wouldn't come on until the next financial year. And is that?
Does that answer your question, Councillor Davies? Yep. Councillor Koch.
Thank you, Chair. This is to Wendy. I did get your answer back. I just want to clarify, you're talking about 30 metres radius. That's 3,000 square metres, isn't it? Pi r squared, blah, 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 3,000 square metres. That's essentially what we've got there already in the playground and the grass area. It's about 1/5 of an oval. Now, so the expectations probably are different, but I think it's astronomical that we'd spend $150,000 on putting in irrigation for 3,000 square metres and then spend another $16,000 plus a year on water when we've already spent a whole lot of money on the playground and the kick-around area, which we all thought was sufficient. And sometimes I wonder whether we have this knee-jerk reaction when residents say they want something and we rush out and do it, because this would, in my opinion, cause a domino effect on every single other Category D parkland in the whole town that had irrigation before, and there's no end to it. So, but anyway, I just wanted to confirm that it was 30...
sorry, yeah, I was just going to get to that question.
Yeah, that was all I wanted to do, was confirm that it was 30 metres radius, because it's only 3,000 square metres. That's all I wanted to confirm.
Yeah, sure, through the chair. So I guess when we were looking at it initially, we were looking at that type of area, but that type of area to renew irrigation for isn't going to cost $150,000, which is where I guess there's a difference between, I guess, a baseline renewal area and an upper limit of what that $150,000 could do. So really that's all I can answer. I guess we would expect for $150,000 you could renew probably 3 times that size, but I guess I'm just trying to put, a range of what could be from one small end of the scale to the large end. And I think, again, so I guess I would like to restate that I don't think that this is a knee-jerk budget bid at all. I think people's desire for this reserve has been well known, even back when we were doing the engagement for the playground renewal, and that, the community desire for it is huge. That's not saying that there aren't other sites that had their irrigation switched off, wouldn't like it. However, again, the actual recreation and open space value of this site, being that it can actually be used for informal ball sport, versus other areas which are more decorative or ornamental, means that this actually would have a higher priority for renewal and in our perspective.
Wendy, if I asked a question on notice as well, the hypothetical of the project going ahead, and then that renewal, that recurring cost per annum in regards to potential water usage with the lower end, higher end, is that something you'd be able to provide members? Nothing you'll be held to, but just as a general, pull a trigger on a project 1 year and understanding what that means moving forward, and might provide a little bit of comfort to members as well. Is that fair? Yep. I appreciate that. Councillor Solomon.
Thank you, Chair. To put you through to Wendy. Just to clarify, I think Councillor Koch talked about some of the terminology that we've got in that in the new some of the report, the strategy we have, and it said it was category D. But just to understand, is this upgrading a category, or is it just bringing it up to a standard that it should have been at under our existing sort of plans for the reserve?
Yep, so through the Chair, so this reserve would have been a Class C reserve, so it's irrigated with, I guess, a lower standard of service in terms of mowing frequency compared to, level category A's and B's. Class D is where it is non-irrigated, and basically it's a much highly reduced rate of service level in terms of mowing and weed control and all the rest. So this would be bringing it back to at least what it was. Probably a little bit less than, to be honest, because I think in its heyday it would have been, managed as quite a Class B reserve. But this is at least bringing it up to, I guess, irrigated green space that can be used for, again, against that informal ball sport or running or whatever people want to do.
Thank you, Wendy. Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, just a question. I sort of agree with the consultation on the site, because a lot of the feedback I saw and I've been told is about having native bushes and shrubs and grasses and stuff like that, and actually, a lot of people are scared off of irrigation as well. So would that be part of that consultation?
Yeah, through the Chair, absolutely. And I think, again, the understanding what, I guess, an integrated use of that site might be. I think there's probably, without speaking on behalf of that community, because I haven't done a formal consultation process on this, but I guess repeating what I have heard through all my conversation, there is a desire for some return of more irrigated and, I guess, informal sporting space, or just recreation space. But there's certainly opportunity to enhance, I guess, the native vegetation there, and I guess make it, a multi-use site, which would, and some combination of that is obviously going to be a lot better than what it is now, which is effectively, to be blunt, it is a field of prickles with some native veg around the side and some quickly eroding edges. That is what it is. So I think the opportunity to do something better with that is there, and we would engage with the community appropriately and come back with a couple of options of how you might invest in it, which again would have a scale of costing.
Thank you, Wendy, and thanks for being the firing line there. Organically, your arm of the business is one of our bigger costs, rightfully so. So we appreciate you candid there. Members, any other questions? Councillor Koch.
Just one question around the northern parkland. We heard about that recently. And there's talk about the southern sports zone. Is it public knowledge when that sports facility will be in place?
Through you, Mr Deputy Mayor, I think the Minister's been pretty open that he wants to deliver it within the next 5 years. So, yep, I think that time frame's fairly public, and the Minister, from my estimation, he's looking to drive this one to deliver it, for the community fairly quickly. If 5 years is deemed as quickly, but yes.
I suppose the other question I've got, follow-up question, is when I look at our long-term financial plan, the Southern Precinct is in 10 years' time, and I think it's $50 million or something. When will we know what our contribution to that precinct will be? Because when I look at the long-term financial plan, in 5 years' time, our debt is $37 million, and we haven't got a capacity to actually borrow any more. I mean, that's a concern for me. If we're now adopting a budget that says we're going to be at 37 million in debt in 5 years' time, and somebody wants to build a facility that we have to provide actual hard folding dollars for, it doesn't seem to align.
Through Mr Deputy Mayor. It's a fair point. I think we need to recognise a couple of things. The debt we're projecting to be approximately 37 million at the end of this budget. Now, going forward, obviously, we'll be looking to generate surpluses in the coming years, and that should drive our debt down to some degree. The big unknown here, though, is what council's contribution is going to be required to deliver the Northern Parklands sporting facility, particularly around South Football Club. And I think I provided some information to elected members that on the 23rd, the staff are receiving a briefing from the department. They may tell us a bit more information, but the Deputy Mayor and I just had a conversation where we're actually going to seek some high-level conversations to try and understand the funding model that the government is going to put forward. Best case scenario, the government puts in the majority of the funds, and it actually takes pressure off our 10-year long-term plan, where some of those indicative figures can come right back, and perhaps we can use them for broader community outcomes. So the short answer is, at this stage, we actually don't have the information to make informed decisions. The best approach I'm recommending to council is that we make decisions on what we know at this point in time. And what we do know in terms of our long-term financial plan is that it's not locked in concrete. We will be reviewing this document every year and probably every 6 months in the current environment they operate in. And things will move and things will shift, and we'll have to adapt to the environment that we're operating in. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I don't know whether Andrew wanted to add something.
Just through the chair, the one thing I was going to add was that you probably haven't had a chance to read my long-winded briefing note I gave out about 5:30 today, which is 8 pages long, so I apologise for that. I'm always apologising. But the other thing I'd mention is that in that document it does say the master plan will be done for the reserve in the next 12 months. So that should give you some more confidence as to who the stakeholders will be and what the contributions would be from all the various parties. So 12 months from now we should know.
Yeah, I do appreciate that, both CEO and Andrew. I think it's the right approach given the information is so fresh. I mean, we were sort of banking on the GARP being released at the end of this month, and how would we be having the conversation now if that was the case? And realistically, we need to be having the conversation now the same way we would if it was being released in March, while we do start figuring out those structure plans and start actually figuring out what this all looks like, what opportunities are available and the like. But until we actually bed down the government's position and figure out ours, I think our focus needs to stay strong in this space until the new information comes forward. Councillor Hennessy.
Yeah, I just wanted to actually thank Andrew, because getting that report 8 pages as it is, as somebody who's quickly skimmed it, it's useful to have that information up, because you can see a variety of opinions coming online, and I think I've already been contacted by a couple of people saying, well, what do you think? It is early days, but just getting a bit of a sense, and I'm sure, as you say, we'll dig down further into it. We'll see the things that we didn't achieve, which is my interest as well. But overall, being informed on the spot is really nice. Thank you. I appreciate it. And as the person who submitted 13 with a follow 5-up questions to Sharon, thank you, Sharon, for your response back. I'm actually quite comfortable, and I'm quite happy in a moment to move the officer's recommendation. My point in doing that is, with time, being able to drill down into our format is much easier because of the way it's presented, but there are still questions. And I don't mind that so long as I can ask the questions and get clarity. Because when people challenge me, who is not the greatest financial, I need to understand and be able to express it. And so by asking questions, I hope I've brought to attention to staff and to my colleagues the things that I don't find very clear. It is much clearer to me now, and I feel I can explain it. There's a few areas I'm still not sure why we do things, but that's okay. I'll live with that. I thank you for your effort in being quick and in response, but also quite clear. It's not a debate. I was just asking questions to get a quick answer back. So thank you.
I appreciate that sentiment. Members, any other questions? I mean, you've got plenty of time, so if there's any burning questions you have in regards, Councillor Hughes.
My biggest concern is the ongoing rate rises of 6%, which will probably be double CPI, and how we're going to sell that to our community, and finding those 3.5% savings each year. I mean, we're going to have to be really disciplined to stick with the long-term financial plan. And really, I'm not seeing the savings in this document really to help with those rate rises. So it's going to be a tough sell. That's a question probably to staff.
Yeah, absolutely. CEO.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. It's a good point, and we will need to work this through with the community as part of our budget consultation. I'd look at it in two aspects. The first is, I've talked previously about our budget saving focus being a two-pronged approach. The first year for me was always, and you could call it low-hanging fruit, but that's to get our budgeting practices strengthened, so that zero-based budgeting approach, and looking at the obvious opportunities to save money. The second approach is the reviews of each individual service. And we've got the frameworks in place now. We've got Bentley's in to help us with that. So we have the frameworks, and that will enable us to focus on each individual service in the business. And the way that's structured, we've got a mechanism so that we're focusing our energies on the particular services where we think there's the most to be gained, and the most obvious savings. Now, the nirvana here is if we can achieve significant savings, that may give us the opportunity to revisit the projected rate rises going forward. But obviously, until we understand the opportunities for the savings and get them to materialise, we can't have that conversation about rates. So I certainly share your concern, but I am confident we can go a long way to delivering on our commitments. Mr Deputy Mayor, I notice Sharon's got some additional comments.
Absolutely, Sharon.
I think obviously the long-term financial plan and it has got a number of numbers attached to it, but I think that the critical thing, and I agree with you, Councillor Hughes, is actually sticking to our strategy and being committed to that strategy. So that strategy has those 5 underlying pillars. The ultimate goal is for us, next time a SCOSA comes through, rather than us being potentially sustainable, we will be sustainable. So that's where we actually need to look to. And the numbers that we actually have in the long-term financial plan are based on the set of predominantly a set of economic conditions that were actually in place at that point in time. And I would sit there and say, so essentially what will actually happen, and I'm pretty sure I said it in the report, is to sit there and say, okay, once you're happy with this as the base position of your budget, the next thing that we'll actually do is go back and revisit everything that we've actually put. We won't revisit the underlying strategy, but we will revisit those principles of the economic conditions and all that sort of stuff, and we will model that. Yes, so inflation has actually come down a lot quicker than probably people had actually anticipated when that. So what does that actually mean on our escalation of cost, and so how can that actually get passed through? So I don't think that, and as Chris says, the long-term financial plan and the financial forecasts were at a point in time. They are continually to be reviewed, And again, they will be based on the decisions of that have actually made and the circumstances have made. You know, because I can sit there and say that if I could forecast out 10 years to tell you what the financial position is, I wouldn't be here. So I know that it's a bit daunting, but again, the numbers that were provided when we actually did that was something that we actually need to sit there and say, okay, well, I think that that's actually the worst case scenario, you know. And as we go through, if we do stick to that discipline of not wanting to, add new things, then that actually also provides that opportunity. And then at the same time, as an administration from a recurrent perspective, we are looking at those efficiencies, because it's to sit there and say, I don't think that there's any savings per se, it's how we're actually being more productive, and it's those efficiencies. So when we grow, when we get new facilities, when we actually bring on areas that have that we're going to increase the service standard, we don't automatically say that there's an operating cost associated with that. We actually do the things that we need to do to actually make sure that we can actually do it within our existing resources. Yes, there's going to be a point in time, maybe 3 or 4 years down the track, that we'll get to a size where we will have to actually increase those operational costs. But in this first 5 years of the plan, it is, what, as Chris says, it's changing the culture of the organisation to sit there and say, actually, just because you're mowing a new reserve doesn't mean you actually get new extra costs. So it's having that time to do that cultural shift and deliver, to sort of sit there and say, okay, because realistically, this is the first budget. We haven't even had a chance to say, to have the opportunity yet, you know, realistically. And I think that that's one of the things is, as a group, we've come a long way in the last couple of years. And I think that, you know, as a group and staff need to actually be congratulated, and the council, of the chamber here, but we just have to have the opportunity to have a go. Because at the moment, it seems like everyone's some people, like, there's a bit of a defeatism, as like, it doesn't matter, we're not going to make it. So that's...
Look, again, I appreciate that, and I agree. We have come a long way in the last couple of years. You know, as business owners, and I know there are a few in this room, you know, that plan for the worst and drive for the best is a sentiment that I think it speaks loudly throughout all walks of business. Members, any further questions? Councillor Wyatt.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Shanks. Just the property valuations, which are a good tool that give us, I know it's not a perfect tool, but the average residential rate increase. When can we expect those valuations to be in and have that average?
Through Mr Deputy Mayor, I get Sharon if she's got any insights on the timing that data is going to come in.
Through the Chair. So we have had the first lot of the numbers, but essentially there's nothing to be gleaned from that, because there's it doesn't actually have a whole heap of revisits, which basically takes into account what the new growth and the new development is. So at this point in time, so I'm hopeful that over the next couple of weeks, some of that data will actually start getting reflected in our valuations number. Again, just on a surface, we've still had some good growth in just organic growth in our property values. Like, I know that there has been the talk about in the media that, you know, property values have come off. I think that rhetoric is actually for the eastern states. It's not necessarily here in South Australia. So I think that there are still talking about potentially a 10% property increase, value increase. But yeah, so hopefully by the time it goes to the Audit Committee, I'll have a better indication of what that means, and it will definitely be available prior to. And I think that one of the things I was talking to Chris about is after it goes to the Audit Committee, we do have an information briefing session for the Audit Committee to provide their feedback to you as a chamber, and I think that potentially I'll probably use that session as well as an opportunity to start introducing those, that rating information as well. Because I think by that time we probably would have had 6 or 7 weeks of valuation data, and a lot of the new property stuff comes in.
Thank you, Sharon. Any other further questions? Any other clarity, burning points, anything before we move into the recommendation? If not, I'm actually going to split the recommendation to move number 1 first. What that actually allows members is, should there be any want to do anything below the line, above the line, and the like, what this allows us to do is have those discussions should number 1 need to be changed as amended, and then number 2, number 3, we can actually move separately. If elected members want to move that way, it's your chamber. If you want to turn around and move the original officer's recommendation, by all means, I'm in your hands.
I'm happy to test the floor and go for the original recommendation. And if it
Councillor
doesn't go through, then perhaps we can follow your suggestion.
Councillor Hennessy.
So yeah, I'm happy to move it. I look forward to getting the feedback from the audit risk. I think their new role, or their new emphasis of their role, and a special meeting coming back is to be welcomed. They, as our independent consultants on this area, their feedback is valued, because another pair of eyes looking at it and raising issues with us is to be welcomed. So I'm feeling very confident and look forward to their response. But yes, I'm happy to move the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hennessy. Looking for a second, members. Councillor Solomon.
Yeah, I'm happy to second that, and I hope it comes as no surprise. I think there's, with this, with this budget process, I think we need to, as Councillor Koch mentioned earlier, we do need to start paying down our debt, and I think that the way that we do that needs to be doing 2 things in tandem. Obviously, the first is to find savings that help us to deliver a surplus, and the second is to deliver a change to the structural issues we have with our operating budget as well. And so I think that this budget presents a good pathway to begin that process and get us where we need to be. And by all means, there will still be decisions that have to be made. This is not going to be a budget that sets us up for the next 10 years and then we, take our foot off and don't worry about anything. But I think it's the next step in that right direction.
Thank you, Councillor Solomon. Open for debate, members. Councillor Koch.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Thank you, Chair. Look, I'll be voting against this motion, as I don't believe this budget is a fair and equitable budget. This is the first budget from the previous, from the previously adopted long-term financial plan, so it sets the scene for the budgets to come. And in my opinion, there's no turning back once this budget is in place. For example, this budget will see, looking at the long-term financial plan, our borrowings will be $35 million. That's what the long-term financial plan says. So we're sort of essentially agreeing to that. So there's no turning back from that. So that's just the reality. The long-term financial plan is centred around asset renewal and an intention to get council back to its financial sustainable footing. So we're going to be, so by 27-28, our debt will be $37 million, and it will stay at that level to 29-30, and then we will be developing for somehow this wonderful surplus, and then we're going to then take our debt down to $12 million by 34-35. So that's $25 million. So you just have to look at the long-term financial plan and look at that. So over 5 years, we're going to be repaying back $25 million. I find this highly unlikely to be achieved, given all the other demands that are coming to council, for example, with the new Northern Parklands. We've just heard, we just now know, the community now knows that the government wants Gawler South to be down there in 4 to 5 years. I can't see us having any capacity to provide any funds for that. I think it's a $50 million development. It's in our plan here, $50 million. I can't see us having any opportunity at all to do that. If we look at what's happened out at Lyndoch, it was a 50-50 split. I mean, I don't see how we're going to do it. I don't have any capacity to do that. Historically what we've done is that we've had a debt, we've worked at it, it's been like a sine curve, I've talked about this before. We get debt, we get the debt down, we do another big project. This is, with getting debt, it doesn't sit right with me. So I'm convinced that we're actually embarking on long-term intergenerational debt. Now, the SCOSO report actually, I think, was pretty telling. It says we're now in a financially unsustainable position, and we could get out of it if we follow the steps in here. But I just find it difficult that we're going to have rate rises that will be double the CPI, for the next 10 years. And it was only 2 years ago that this council actually passed a deficit budget because they were concerned about the cost of living on people. So that's a 180-degree turnaround, from where people were 2 years ago. That they were concerned about the cost of living and people not being able to pay, etc. And now you're quite happy to have a 6% rate rise for 10 years, which is double the CPI. It doesn't sit right with me. So, the SCOSO actually says it would be better, to exposing people to all that, exposing the community to those future rate rises. It would be better to have cost savings implemented and actually reduce your capital program. That's what they're saying. Actually find the savings and then get your capital program down instead of imposing these, I think, pretty horrendous rate increases, which are compounding every year for 10 years. I just can't, that does not sit right with me. Now, I just want to talk to a couple of items which I have raised before. The first one is, when we talk about efficiencies and zero-based budgeting, that's all very nice, but, when I look at one of them is the doubling the capacity in the ARB area. I've reread the Tree Revolution report of 2019, and I will talk about it because that's a public document. I will talk about it, and it is not irrelevant anymore and it's not out of date. What that actually says was that we were over-pruning our trees by 300%. Or actually 500%. We were pruning the trees every single year when the industry standard was 5 years. We're now at 3. So that means that in reality, if we're pruning pruning trees every 3 years, people only need to be pruning for 4 months of the year. You've got 8 months of the year to do other things. Now, all of a sudden, you want to double that capacity and prune for potentially 12 months of the year again. I mean, it has actually a detrimental effect on the health of plants, and that's actually in the report. I'm not going to go any further because I'll only comment on what was in that report. The other one, I listened to what was said about Hemmerford Grove, but, when we actually, to spend, potentially $150,000 to irrigate, 3,000 square metres, it doesn't gel. There's something wrong there with the costings. Something's happening. Someone hasn't done zero-based budgeting, I think. When I remember that when we did Williston Oval, that was $80,000 a couple of years ago. So you think, okay, well, 150 must be double, blah, blah, blah. So I actually thought it was the whole oval, but it's only actually a tiny little bit. And when you actually look at the IPOS report, which was Landscape Irrigation Plan of 2020, it actually talked about that the industry is moving away from all this irrigation and getting back to smaller areas and native vegetation. And in there's actually a comment about Hemmerford Grove, and it was around 2,000 square metres, which is what we've got there now, which is basically what we've got there now. So we accepted that report, but then all of a sudden we've just said, oh, we don't accept it anymore. We've got climate change. We know that. We can see the farmers suffering, you know, and we want to go out and spread spread precious water out there. You know, we actually have a climate emergency plan. We've said that we'll reduce our resources and carbon footprint. This doesn't do it. It's at odds. It's at odds with it. So for those reasons, I just cannot vote for this this budget tonight, and that's just and I will be calling a division because I really want the community to know the people who are saying that they're quite happy with rate rises at 6% for 10 years, double the CPI, when 2 years ago they were saying they were very, really concerned about the cost of living and the way that people were suffering. So, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Koch. I know it's not always easy to speak against a budget. I've done it a number of years in the past, so thank you for putting those thoughts forward. You will note that I did try to split the motion as well, so no, that's all right. Just to be clear about those opportunities, and just to provide just a further comment in relation to decisions of the past. I think the difference, I guess, here that we need to be very clear about is the business strategy that we are now implementing in relation to being able to be clear where ratepayers' dollars are going moving forward. They don't just arbitrarily go up in a time of cost of living as well. So I think that's also a great point and a great message that we've been pretty consistent with. However, again, thank you very much. I know it's not easy. I've done it multiple times. Any further discussion? Councillor Davies.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to support this motion. I think the asset renewal, spending more on asset renewal to save money does, I don't know, sound funny at first glance, but I think it's very easy to give examples like the big expensive wall that is a massive failure of asset renewal that has meant that we are going to spend significantly more than we would have to have just done our asset renewal properly in the past. And when we don't do asset renewal properly, it means that we are dealing with surprise emergencies, and so our budget doesn't end up actually being the budget because it's always the budget plus millions in surprise emergencies. And so we're not really giving an honest and accurate accounting of our budget in that sense. So I'd prefer for us to be on top of things, get things across, and then the budget that we present is a lot closer to the actual budget as it will in fact be implemented.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Any further discussion, members? Councillor White.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I want to talk about the budget as it stands at the moment. I think I want to thank Councillor Koch for some of his words earlier, because I personally am very concerned about rate rises, the cost of living for our community. And, I can attest that 2 years ago I was one of those people that was, very concerned about the expenses we had and the money we're collecting. In fact, still am concerned. That is absolutely true. However, I think the attitude of this organisation from a business side has dramatically shifted, not only in regards to our finances, but into the way we operate, and that transparency, not only with elected members, but with the community as well, has opened up hugely in the last 24 months. I think that's safe to say that most of my colleagues would agree with me there. So through that process, I've seen that we've seen, and I've personally seen as a representative of the community, these huge gaps that we've been missing for too long. And we're, I guess, left with a choice right now, and we can focus on the now and focus on potentially, keeping rates to an absolute minimum that it continues to be a detriment for future generations, or we can bring the community along and have those really difficult conversations and talk about, hey, this is the situation at the moment. we've been doing a lot of work. And when I say we, I mean the dedicated staff that we have, and in particular in this space, Sharon and her team, who have done a huge amount of work to actually go, hey, our business at the moment is not viable, and we've had external people come in and say we're actually not sustainable. In order to turn that around, this is what we're going to have to do. And hey, it's not going to be easy. I think it's our responsibility to share that message with the community, and that's not easy at all. And yes, Councillor Koch, in regards to the rate revenue, looking at 6% for the total rate revenue, we're still waiting on valuations, and we know that obviously varies. I find that difficult to come to terms with personally. However, what I think I find more important is that we're making sure we have a council and services that are essential to this community that continue to be provided now and into the future. And the unfortunate truth is that in order to do that, this is what we have to do. We have to continue to increase our rates, and we have to make some hard decisions, and we have to be really strict. And looking at that long-term financial plan, yeah, it can be a bit scary, I agree. But I think what we need to do is trust in the expertise of our staff and this transparency that we've been given, and share that with the community in order to make sure that, one, this council is sustainable, but more importantly, it means we can continue providing these essential services to our community, which, again, is a very difficult conversation to have. But I think it's an important decision, and I believe it's the right decision, which is why I'm happy to support the budget at the moment to go to the Audit and Risk Committee. I know this is the first step in many steps. Our community will have direct engagement on it after it goes to Audit and Risk, and I would strongly encourage the community to have their say. Sitting here, it's a privilege to speak on behalf of the community, but there are also many different opinions within our community, and it's important we hear all sides of that. In the past 48 hours, I think it's safe to say Gawler's been put under the spotlight a bit and sort of been put on the map again. So the state is looking towards Gawler at the moment. A huge opportunity that come with this growth, and we've seen that. We've seen that in the last couple of days that, with regards to the Great Adelaide Regional Plan, which has all become public. And I personally think it's really exciting as a younger person in this town going, wow, look what Gawler is becoming. And yep, change is sometimes a bit scary, but there's some really positive things that can come out of it. However, I don't want to be in a position where the town of Gawler as a council doesn't exist to embrace those opportunities fully. And that's a really tough decision, because right now you go, Ethan, really, you want to put up the rate revenue by 6%. Right now that really hurts, and yeah, it absolutely does. However, we need to do the best we can to work with our community, working with them to build towards that really exciting future that I think we can all agree now is becoming abundantly clear that, hey, stakeholders, the state government, the broader region is taking seriously and going, hey, there's some really exciting stuff that's coming our way over the next decade or so. Let's make sure we're ready for it so that our future ratepayers can really benefit from the decisions we're making today. And hopefully we can all look back in 10 years' time and go, hey, that was really tough and it was really difficult, but we did our very best to bring the community along, and right now we're enjoying the rewards. So for that reason, I'm happy to support the budget in principle for it to go to Audit and Risk, but do anticipate and welcome any and all feedback moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor White. Any further discussion? Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, I'm really concerned, like Councillor Koch, because in the past when we have put rates up, we've actually delivered new projects and exciting projects for our community. This time we're not. We're doing the exciting thing of eventually getting our debt down. We're not cutting any costs. We're hopefully operating at balanced again, which would be fantastic. We have been operating in a deficit, which is terrible. We're borrowing to just operate, which is wrong. We need to rationalise our costs. We need to rationalise for the long-term future of Gawler, because 6% plus the 3.5% savings, plus whether we get the 2% growth, I don't know. Growth is all over the place. I'm hearing stories that some areas aren't selling at all, or there's lack of water and other resources for growth as well. I do think for Gawler we need to be bold. I do agree that 6%, if we were to really get on top of our debt and also look at really delivering for our community and have a real great sales pitch to our community, I think we can do it. But at the moment, our rates are really high. It's what I cop every weekend. Why are our rates so high? I get it every day. and it's really hard to justify sometimes when especially when you're in an operating deficit, you're borrowing to, and we really need to rationalise our services, and we really need to deliver budgets that show our community, yes, we are sustainable. We're not just putting the rates up to balance the books and keep the lights on. We're actually doing more than that. We do deliver some fantastic services, so the council staff do an amazing job. We do a lot of things that the community don't realise we do on a daily basis, and the staff answer phone calls and queries about all sorts of things that most ratepayers would never realise. So there's a lot of things that local government does, which is amazing, but unfortunately it costs a lot of money to keep the lights on, and I think with our budgets, we need to be looking at ways of being innovative and collaborative, working with other councils. I work with 16 councils, and some of those councils, they're sharing staff across a number of councils. They're even looking at sharing CEOs across a number of councils. They're doing some innovative things because they have to be sustainable in the future. And I think Gawler's in the same boat. We have to really look outside the box to be sustainable. And I'd like to see, when this goes to the audit committee, that the audit committee come up with some of the things that are going on across the state and in interstate that is innovative. And we can demonstrate to our community that Gawler is an innovative council, because I'm not seeing it in this budget, anything outstanding. I'm not seeing us even being able to help deliver on the GARP, which the state government's going to definitely ask us for, which is really going to put us in a really difficult budget position, which we're already in already. So we really need to rationalise, be innovative. Unfortunately, cut costs, and that's the services that we deliver for our community, because our rates are really high. Our community is really struggling. A lot of people in our community are struggling to, they're cutting back on what they're doing. I think as a council we have to also look at that as well. So I'll be voting against this.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Lorna?
Thank you for that, Deputy Mayor. Firstly, I'm not keen on the 6% rate rise. I'm going to have to pay that myself for a couple of homes anyway, so that's going to be very exciting. However, I do understand that when we get to this situation, which, let's face it, it's been years in the making to get this situation where it's actually been, I don't know, fast years, the wall's been pulled over people's eyes. Maybe the staff hasn't had the authority to tell us how it actually is. That's how I feel from sitting into the first couple of meetings that we sat in. I'm looking at it as, we need to grow and adapt. Like I said, I voted also to not put a rate rise in. And if I had that choice again, maybe if I knew what I knew now, I may have voted a little bit different on that. I do not want to see the rates go up, but it's just a reality from what I can see. What the staff and the CEOs come on, given a bit more clarity of actually what's actually happening and a form to go forwards. We're going to the audit committee at the moment, so that's as Ethan said as well, that's the first step that we're actually looking at. They're going to come back with us. If we vote against it, who knows? Maybe we'll get a letter from them telling us we've done the wrong thing. Exciting project. Exciting project to me is actually making sure that Gawler stays sustainable, is sustainable. The rest of it's going to come into it. We may be the bad people for quite some time at the moment. Hopefully, if this all pays off, and I've got a lot of faith in the staff and the CEO that we have brought on for this particular reason, I hope that it's our future generations and that will benefit from it. So that's where I'm sitting on it at the moment. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lorna. Councillor Solomon, seek leave? Councillor Solomon seek leave to speak again. Does he have it? You do, Councillor Solomon.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think my first contribution was a little bit short, and then I probably assumed that some things were evident in this that probably weren't as clear as I thought, and I think there's some concerns that should be addressed and that our community would benefit from some robust discussion on. So I'll have another slightly lengthier contribution. I think Councillor Hughes talked there about some of the projects that we've funded in the past, and when we've been borrowing, we've been doing it to fund some of those exciting projects. I'll put the view that those projects, unfortunately, I don't think that they were actually paid for. We were sitting in this beautiful building right now, but that wasn't paid for. We had massive increases in our workforce cost that resulted in a $1 million operating deficit, or more than $1 million operating deficit. That wasn't paid for. We had new services, which are essential services that we've added, but they haven't been paid for. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to pay for that. And that is unfair, but it's because, unfortunately, some budgets in the past, I personally don't think were equitable. And so now we need to find a way to pay down this massive debt we have with what I think is, little to show for it. And I think that's an unfortunate situation to find ourselves in. I think before, and not through the fault of any individual, but when I first came into this chamber, when we first had the new council, we had a very new team, we had a very new executive team, we had a lot of new, a few of us new elected members in the chamber, and some of the plans looked a little bit fuzzy. Some of the budgeting was a little bit opaque, but over the last 2 years, suddenly we've got these plans, and they're really good plans. We've got a plan for asset management. We've got a plan to get us back in the black so that we can actually start to pay down that debt. We've got a plan for what our growth looks like, and we're no longer sweeping this under the rug. And I think that the projections which we're putting in, which look scary because we haven't had them in the past, but had we had them in the past, we probably wouldn't be in the position we are, and we probably wouldn't be escalating our debt to the point that we are in this at the current time. When I look at the long-term financial plan, and when I look at this budget, I don't see a debt which is going to be built up because we're going to fund a bunch of projects that we can't afford over the next 30 years. I see a debt which is inevitably growing because we haven't been able to come up with a strategy to pay that down in the past. And if the 1.2 or maybe higher operating deficit that we had, paying for things like staff wages, borrowing to pay staff wages doesn't demonstrate that, then I don't know what does. So I think where we've come from is a place that we should aim to never get back to. And while some of those big projects do look scary now, we have a plan to pay for them. We have a plan to make sure that these surprise costs don't pop up, so that all of us, and I know everyone here would do it because I do it on a regular basis, tell people that we can't deliver basic services on their street, or they don't deserve green space because we've let things slip from a Class C to a Class D reserve simply because we had an unexpected cost somewhere else, because we didn't factor it in, because we didn't maintenance a heritage wall, because we didn't plan for huge wage increases or growth in other areas. We can stop saying that. We can stop making that excuses. We can deliver on the services that people expect from us, and we can actually seek to do it in a financially sustainable way. So I think that's where we've come from, and I think that's where we're going with this budget, and that's why I'll be supporting it, and I hope that others here can too.
Thank you, Councillor Solomon. Any further discussion? If not, Councillor Hennessy, is it all right if I just give a little bit of sort of prepared as an elected member to provide a little bit of debate. So I'm a little bit gagged at the moment. So I won't enter into the debate. All I'll just try to provide is a little bit of I guess a more high-level opinion piece that I've provided in the past. Firstly, thank you to my colleagues for the discussion tonight, and this is an important process moving forward. I guess where my head's at moving forward personally is one, I'm not comfortable about rate rises either, being a ratepayer myself, as well as friends, family and the like. I'm also not necessarily happy about being a taxpayer as well, and the list goes on. But what I am trying to take a little bit of comfort in is just touching on what Sharon spoke about earlier in the meeting. This step one approach in actually seeing what all this planning will now be able to pay dividends on or not. You know, you need to understand the actuals and the performance and the quality review that we are going to be responsible for. Whether you vote for the budget or not, we are still on the hook for being responsible as custodians of that performance. This is why we have our CEO, this is why we have our staff, and this is why questions like Councillor Hennessy's, Councillor Koch's and the rest of my colleagues are so important, because engagement in this process moving forward is only going to either show that it is the strategy that's going to get us where we want to go, where our community wants to go, or it's not. If it's not, we need to tweak, we need to adapt, we need to move. Because like it or not, growth is happening to our region. And if we're not prepared as a business to be agile and jump at opportunities as they come along, I think we're doing an injustice to the next generation and the like. And there is that piece on good debt and bad debt. And I think that's something we need to be very, very clear on moving forward, because scrapping a bunch of services or cutting a whole bunch of costs to hurt where we are right now to finance something for the next generation doesn't do this generation justice, and vice versa. That's why the use of borrowings actually is that equitable way to spread across a range if the debt is managed in a good way. Again, I've really sort of tried to restrict my notes a little bit to not enter into the debate, but I'd just like to thank my colleagues for the discussion. I know sometimes it can seem like we get through these meetings, you know, we're talking about a $40 million budget more or less, and we've discussed it now, but we all know in this room that we've had workshops, we've had audit and risk committees, we've had strategic planning, information briefings, and I think it's a credit to staff and elected members, regardless of where you may sit. So on that note, Councillor Hennessy, would you like to close the debate?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you for your words. Again, I'd like to echo the civility at which we've had this discussion tonight, all points of view. We were elected to work hard and make difficult decisions. I concur with Councillor White. You know, where we think back over the last 2 years where we're up to, and now we face some difficult decisions, some difficult work, but like has been said, we are ultimately responsible for making this a fair and sustainable organisation. And I've taken note of two things that have come up tonight. I have faith in the SCOSA report and where it says we are heading and where we should head. I feel that that is part of the process that's led me to be able to support the budget per se. And tonight we've heard from several people that this is the first stage of a process. And our CEO has told us that Benson will come in for the second stage, which will be that service level review that we've asked for before, repeatedly before. So it's, you know, it's simply a step. Yes, nobody likes death and taxes, absolutely. All of us can be absolutely convinced on that. But we do have a responsibility to pull this organisation back into shape so that we can move forward, as Councillor Solomon, without having to explain that, you know, we're leaking at the edges type thing. So thank you for the debate, and happy to wind it up and put it to the vote.
I'll put that motion. All those in favour? And all those against? And I'll set the vote aside. If all those in favour can please stand. Councillor Koch has called a division. If all those in favour could stand. So we have Councillor Vallelonga, four. Councillor Vallelonga, Councillor Davies, Councillor White, Councillor Lorna, Councillor Solomon and Councillor Hennessy. Against, we have Councillor Koch, Councillor Hughes and Councillor Samble. Thank you, members. I declare the vote carried. And that brings us to the end of our special council meeting. Thank you, members, for your attendance, and thank you for those tuning in. We're going to close the meeting at 8:11. Thank you.